I'm not so sure. I don't think they are much better defensively, because actually we're talking about a team going from maybe third best defence to the best at the moment, and could that little difference make a difference? Of course. But we're talking about a team who are going from almost the second best attack to 6th, even one of the stats is 11th. Now, we're still only, a third away through the season. Now, I think if Arsenal continue how they are, and if this is the Arsenal that we're going to see this season, I don't think that can win the league. I really don't, because I think so many games are going to the wire, and sometimes that game can go against you. You think of the Ramsdale mistake, the big chance that Brentford had also in the second half. So those games that are 1-0 can easily go 1-0 against you. And for me, when we're talking about a different Arsenal, we can see it with the stats, but everyone can see it with their eyes. It's not sort of the same fluidity, the same pace, energy, creating chances. You can see that. I don't actually think it's anything tactical. When I watch Arsenal, I'm still seeing the same things. Zinchenko's going into midfield. Declan Rice has come in for Thomas Partey, but Thomas Partey was outstanding at this stage, certainly last season, and Declan Rice has been outstanding. Actually, in midfield, I'd say they're actually more offensive in that. When you think of last season, it was Granit Xhaka who was playing that sort of high left number 8 role, and he was almost a midfield player playing an attacking role. At the weekend, that was Trossard. At times, we've seen Havertz in that position. So, at times, they've actually been more offensive. But the reason I don't think they are as fluid, I just think individually, the attacking players have been average this season, where they were on absolute fire last season in terms of Martinelli, Saka, Jesus. Odegaard, for me, last season was up there alongside Kevin De Bruyne. I know he's had a few injury problems, but when we actually look at the stats...
Well, all those 4 players that you mentioned, Jamie, all hit double figures last season. Yeah. And I suppose the best way to sort of compare is by minutes per goal. And you can see, actually, it's gone up for every single player there. So none are scoring at the same rate as they were last season.
Can Arsenal actually win the league? I know the fans want it. It's been 20 years too long. I think when you break it down, I think there's reasons to be optimistic. I think there's reasons to be pessimistic. I think there's reasons to believe that Arsenal can go all the way at least to the last game of the season and run it to the wire. Now, just because we finished last season second doesn't mean we're necessarily the second best team in England. And it doesn't mean how the season panned out last year will run directly as this year. We all know, I would say City are the number 1. You've got Liverpool lurking. The media was saying Tottenham, so they've got to be thrown into it as well. And many other teams, people. I believe there's reasons to be optimistic. And Mikel Arteta, I'm sure internally, they'll never tell us in the public, but I think the players have to be dreaming of it. There has to be fresh wounds still fresh in the memory of obviously how last season ended. And although we didn't go into the season expecting to win a title, there is no doubt about it. It was a missed opportunity. It was an opportunity of a lifetime, one that you can't guarantee will necessarily be there this season. We currently sit first in the table. I don't look at the league table. The only time the league actually matters in terms of rankings is in May, when you've played 38 games. And there's a lot of volatility. There's been a lot of shock results already. Us actually beating the title holders in Manchester City recently, which, when was the last time we did that, people, when it mattered? I mean, Gary Neville seems to believe we can win it, and kind of to directly add to Jamie Carragher's comments, but slightly differ. He has basically mentioned, as you can see in front of me, that actually the fact that we've become more boring and maybe less entertaining on the eye could actually be a benefit. You know what they say, defense wins titles. So I don't think he's necessarily wrong in that regard. We've actually, on the topic of defenses, faced the fewest shots on target in the Premier League this season with 28. Manchester City are second with 35. It's unsurprising, well, surprisingly better yet. You've got Everton with 47 and Crystal Palace with 47. So it shows that we're building a solid foundation. But when you see the teams ranked 3rd and 4th, probably can't read too much into it. But we are improving defensively, as I said, with the various metrics, and defense wins titles. Our first defender is our attacker, and we're showing a willingness to do that. Potentially, there's an over-reliance on Bukayo Saka, but some people say he's having a slow season. The numbers are there in terms of goals and assists to suggest he's doing what needs to be done. Maybe he's dying by the high standards he's previously set. Maybe this over-reliance on him could be at our detriment, because only 2 players have created more chances than him in the Premier League this season, as you lot can see, people. Arsenal have also kept the most clean sheets away from home in the Premier League since the start of last season. We have 14, people. Manchester United, Manchester City and Fulham have 8. Brentford and Palace also have 7. Now, I would like to know the clean sheets at the Emirates. I mean, clean sheet of the season was against Manchester City. Saliba absolutely locked up Haaland. So it is what it is, and we've done all right away from home. Even though, you know, you look at the game against Chelsea, you look at the defeat to Newcastle, you look at how we went out the cup to West Ham, you look at when we lost the Lens in the Champions League. You know, probably the Emirates has been a happier home, but I do think, you know, like last season, we're a lot more professional away from home. I would say the biggest issues would obviously be, I'm sure a lot of you have seen the Sky Sports statistics, people. Again, we've improved so much off the ball. I think off the ball in the middle third and defensive third, we're one of the best in Europe, but goals win games, and I don't think we're fit and firing in that regards. Last season we were second for goals. This season we're sixth. Open play goals last season we were second. This year we are 11th. So maybe there's an over reliance on crosses and set pieces, and actually substitutes making the impact off the bench, people. Shots, last season we were fifth. This season we're sixth. So maybe despite the fact that we looked more fluid last season and were scoring more goals, maybe the picture has also always been here, but it was a different sort of talking point from last year. In defense, we were third last season. This season, we're first. For shots faced, we remain second, people. This season is 8.5. Last season, it was 9. XG against, we were third last season. This season, we're first. XG difference, we were third. So, and now we're second. So that does show an improvement. But ultimately, goals win games. And if we could start to look a bit more fluid and marry that with stronger defensive foundations, in my opinion, we might be laughing and onto something special, folks, in my opinion. So yeah, man, let me know your thoughts. And again, I would love to win the Premier League title. We're in the business for trophies. The players want to do it. The manager wants to do it. Lord knows us fans have been waiting. Some Arsenal fans haven't even seen us win the league title. And I don't believe the Emirates will truly feel like home until we win a major honour, whether that is the Prem or we're a long way away from winning the Champions League, but the Champions League. But as I said, I run it all the way. And if it's a thing we look back in May and we say we gave it as good as we got, we couldn't have done anything different, then I think we have to hold our hands up. If it's like last season or the season before where we missed out on Champions League football to go with last season, missing out on the Prem, where we've shot ourselves in the foot again, I'd be disappointed. There's no shame in losing to Manchester City in a game of football, let alone a league title, but it's how you do it. No matter how we look at it, Manchester City, as great as they are, take nothing away from that club, Pep Guardiola and everyone else involved. But we had an opportunity of a lifetime in our hands last season, one that might not necessarily be here this year, to take advantage, and we were unable to do so. Hopefully this season is better. Let me know your thoughts. Can Arsenal win the Premier League? Now, it's a question that I don't think anyone can give a definitive yes or no. I think there's reasons to be optimistic. I think there's reasons to be pessimistic. Now, when you deep it, Arsenal Football Club under Mikel Arteta, there has been a lot of money spent. I do think on one hand, if we're not trying to aspire to get towards City or pip City to a Premier League title or do what they're doing and more, what are we in the business for, really and truly? You know, again, we finally returned to the Champions League. I don't necessarily just want to be a club that just qualifies for the sake of it, but we need to remember the attraction that gives to buying players and whatnot, and obviously the money that gives us to obviously buy the likes of Declan Rice and these players that can change our fortunes and make an instant impact beyond our wildest expectations. Now, I don't think it's a thing where, for me personally, context is key. I wouldn't sit here and say sack Mikel Arteta if we don't win a major honour. That isn't me defending him blindly or saying we should keep him. I don't, and it's not my job to answer this, but I don't know who the manager coming in. I do think, you know, while we've been patient for over 20 years, and I know it's frustrating and I'm not using it as a cop-out, we need to remember the belly of the beast, and it is a gradual process. I am not cutting excuses, but we do have young players. When you're looking at winning a league title, let alone the league title against City, again, when the season plays out, it might be something completely different. But for me, in August, you need to sit there and be targeting 90 points. Do Arsenal have the ability to get 90 points? But do we have the consistency to get over 38 games collectively and individually? I believe, you know, we've got to aspire for that. We've got to give it all the way. But in my heart, I don't believe we can. I think there's too many questions, really and truly. And I'm only saying that, you know, in Arsenal in isolation, what we're doing, what we're developing, what we're brewing, you know, it is great. But if we're looking at, you know, up the road, not really up the road, but up the road against City, they've got confirmation over players. Yes, last season we scored 80 odd goals. You know, this season we've got 20. But chance creation and chance conversion, if you're trying to win a league title, it needs to go up a level. In my honesty, I think we're a dramatically improved defensive side, specifically this season so far, and obviously last season. But we defend to the capabilities of a Premier League champion at this moment in time? I don't believe we are. I think we're moving in the right direction. Please listen to what I'm saying, people, because I think we've improved a lot defensively, but we still have that brain fart. So of course, sometimes things go wrong, things don't go your way, and there's been games, you know, we do have a new mentality. We never give up until the end, and we've seen that throughout the last 2 years, specifically against Brentford and Man United. We get those games done, but we still got that patch of being emotional. We need to be a bit more boring, a bit more cerebral, have that game management. It's easier said than done, but find the goals and put, you know, Brentford to the sword rather than a last-minute winner. Not have those brain farts in the last 2 games we've actually played at home to Man United. Actually, not shoot ourselves in the foot against Chelsea, because while it was a dramatic and a courageous comeback, we were probably very fortunate to pick up a point, really, because based on the 70-odd minutes before we got back in it, we weren't there. We shot ourselves in the foot against Spurs and Fulham. Newcastle, I think we actually did all right in the defensive and middle third. Ultimately, when it comes to putting in the ball in the back of the net, we were unable to do that, VAR or not. So when I'm looking, while I like what the club's doing, when I look at things of that ilk, people, it does make me somewhat pessimistic on the Premier League title. You know, I want to win the league. Minimum, we need to get Champions League football again. In my opinion, a top 3 finish. Of course, I would like first or second, get to the latter stages of the Champions League. And I actually believe, you know, when you go through our squad, it's easier said than done, but we're getting to that point where we need game changers. Saliba, breath of fresh air, a game changer. Declan Rice, a game changer. Bukayo Saka, a game changer. You know, how many of those players of that ilk do we have in the squad? I would say those 3 in particular are of that standard. Like, you can build a team around that. You look at the Arsenal sides that have won league titles. Not everybody was world class, but they were game changers. You look at the Chelsea, the Man United, the City sides, there's game changers. I would say, if, like I said, Saliba, Rice, and Saka, for me, them lot are up here. To a slight degree, a little tier below. Odegaard, he's gone off the boil, but the man's amazing. He's central to our creativity, central to what we do off the ball. Gabriel Jesus is of that ilk. In his own way, Zinchenko and Tomiyasu have also been thrown in there. He might not be a main player per se, obviously with injuries. Jorginho is central to what we're doing. But Thomas Partey is something to what we're doing. Please don't underestimate Gabriel, big Gabriel at centre half, really, really and truly, and what he's been doing, really. But despite that, I think there's reasons to be optimistic. And again, we need to go challenge all the way. I actually don't think Jamie Carragher is wrong. And I think it's some interesting talking points that Gary Neville's provided people. But for me, you know, we shoot ourselves in the foot. Even look at, there's no shame in losing out to last season, Manchester City with Pep Guardiola, and they're great players and they had history with the treble. But despite how good they are, we know in our hearts, we bottled it. We had it in our hands and we crumbled. That naivety is still there. Now, old habits die hard. You know, the season is a long season and I'm waiting for Arsenal to go up the levels. But as I just said, with the Spurs, the Fulham and the Chelsea game, those mistakes, the good, bad and the ugly, essentially in those games, were there against West Ham, were there against Liverpool and things like that. I do like our waveform. I do like our defensive improvements. I do like that grit and determination and to get a result when things haven't gone your way. Those are things that are part of a squad that wins the title, really and truly. And when you look at it, I think the best thing in life is to write things down. Excuse my poor handwriting, but you know, for the want of this video, I was trying to articulate all my thoughts. So if I start with why, in my heart, I believe we can't win the league title, and I'm not saying to give up on such people. We need to keep going. I think there's a lack of depth in centre mid. You know, I do think if everyone's fit, Partey, Odegaard, Declan Rice, that's it, you know. But at this moment in time, Odegaard's gone off the boil. Declan Rice is the only one that gives you more answers than questions. The only questions you have about Declan Rice is how good can you be? Because you're a very good player. How good can you really get? When Arteta gets to work with you and, you know, make you a bit more refined in the final third, how good will Declan Rice be? I like Jorginho. He's been there, done it, and wore the t-shirt. But if we're looking at him to play 20-odd games, you know, the game he came off the bench against Spurs when the midfield's open, for all his good games, Manchester City, Newcastle, you kind of sign up for those results. I think Gabriel Jesus, to go back to what I was saying earlier, is central to this system and can be part of a squad that can win major honors, and we need to tap into that experience, definitely for some of his younger teammates. But we've taken a squad player from City and tried to make him kind of the guy, and I'm not trying to belittle Jesus. Ultimately, are you going to get enough goals? Can you get us goals that turn defeats into draws into victory? Where would we be if we had 20 30 goal bagsmen in the squad, on top of being able to create chances? Because as I've said in previous videos, I don't necessarily think it's as white and black as we get another striker and Bob's your uncle. We need to create. Obviously, there's low blocks. Some of our attackers haven't really been fit and firing. They've gone off the boil. I do think because of what Arteta is demanding off the ball, we've taken a bit of a hit in the final third. And actually, how often have we seen Saka, Martinelli and Gabriel Jesus start together, really? There's a lot of volatility. As I've said in the previous vid, Martinelli, great player, had a great season last year, but that was his first year in terms of double numbers in the Premier League, same as Odegaard. Saka's done it for 2 years, so I could somewhat bet on him. I don't know if Odegaard and Martinelli are going to do that again. I don't know if Jesus is going to return a certain amount of goals. Ultimately, the hardest thing to do in football is to make the right decision, but I'd say the hardest thing is to score goals. And yes, as I said, we've got 80 odd last year, we've got 20 odd this year. On the face of it, I don't think it's an issue. But if you're watching our games, you know, of course, teams are going to set up like this, but we're not the first or the last team that's going to have to play against low blocks. Why would teams want to set up to allow us to do our thing? So I don't know if we've got enough depth in centre mid. I don't know if there's enough confirmation over players. You know, Saka is going to do it. He's not even really and truly, he's not, you know, fit and firing and moving amazing, but he's still producing results, same as Declan Rice and Saliba and a couple of other players. How many players can I say that about players of this in the starting 11 or the 20-odd squad, 20-man-odd squad? I'm not trying to belittle no one. I'm not trying to pour cold water. I think there's a lot of likable players. I think there's a lot of players that can contribute. But how many did Liverpool have when they won the title and probably still there at the team now? How many have Manchester City got, even those that can't start? We know we're not Manchester City, but this is what we're up against, really and truly. We're bringing a knife to a gunfight, essentially. And I just think there's a hole in midfield, really and truly. I think defensively, we've got some decent options. Going forward, we could improve, but we've got some decent options. There's not enough confirmation around central midfield, people that are going to play in place of Declan Rice or with Declan Rice, if I'm completely honest. I do think we need more variety to our game. I do think it can become a bit predictable. And as a manager, you've got to be ever evolving. And I do think Mikel Arteta is trying to do that. I don't know how we're going to navigate the tail end of the season, because I hope it's third time lucky. But when we lost out to Spurs for top four, and obviously when we lost out on the Premier League last year to City, it was that tail end. You know, there were games that were frustrating and dropped points before, but it was the tail end of the season where ultimately we failed, really and truly. And we need to get out of that habit, if I'm completely honest. You know, as I said, when the season is played, it's completely different. But in August, I'm always looking at 90 odd points. I genuinely think to beat a Manchester City side, you need to be aiming for that. However the season plays out and whatever does it, does it. Are we a team right now that can probably get 90 points? I don't necessarily believe such. And can we stop shooting ourselves in the foot? Because I like the fact we've got 1 L this season, well, 2 L's, well, 3 L's actually, all in 3 different competitions against West Ham United, Newcastle United, and who else did we lose against? Lens in the Champions League. And if you can't win, don't lose. As I said, across the season, you're not going to be perfect for 38 games. There's not going to be 38 amazing games. I'm not asking for that. And I do like the mentality when things have gone wrong to either get a result like against United and Brentford towards the end, to snatch something against, Chelsea, for example. But we still shot ourselves in the foot. Again, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Had we have turned up as the football club we can and how we played this season, would the result of Stamford Bridge went the way it did? Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. And obviously there was individual mistakes and things. And even in that game, Zinchenko and Jorginho on the transition, I'm not trying to target them because they're 2 very good players, but they have weaknesses, and ultimately that makes us weaker. Against Fulham, we didn't start the game well. We was good for the middle part. 3 minutes before the end of the game, we switched off from a set piece. Against Spurs, obviously, we didn't kill the game when we should have in the first half and converted those chances. Second half, we're probably a bit fortunate on top of switching off defensively that we got something out of that game, really. So we need to probably fix up. Again, the Newcastle game, I think that was a missed opportunity because it's one where I don't necessarily think we deserve to lose, if I'm honest, but we didn't create enough. You know, the Brentford game, really and truly, a draw was the fair result. But in life, everything isn't fair. We got things done. So we probably need to be a bit more boring beyond what we're seeing with our eyes and a bit more cerebral and just take care of business, slaughter teams and smell blood. Even the Sheffield United game, we battered them. But wasn't it 1-0 at half time? In the second half, we slaughtered them. We need to chase that illusion of being perfect over 90 minutes. By no stretch of the imagination is City in full form or Liverpool, but they've got the luxury of done what we're aspiring to do. Defensively, I think we've improved. I think we're one of the best defensive teams in the Premier League. I think we've improved dramatically defensively. But do we defend? And it's not just the defenders. Our first attacker is whoever is in goal. Our first defender is whoever's up front. Do we defend necessarily like a team that's going to win the Premier League? Because while we're doing well for clean sheets and definitely clean sheets away from home and all defensive metrics, we still have this element of brain farts. Now, people are human. This is football. Mistakes happen, etc., etc. But we need to eradicate that. As I said, the games need to be a bit less dramatic. We just turn up, win the game, look convincing and go home. But football isn't always that. as I always say, I think we're an improved defensive side, but not necessarily a good one, at the risk of sounding like a hypocrite, people. And then again, I just think there's a lot of unanswered question. Like Zinchenko I think he's harshly done by at times, but ultimately, in the final third, in the defensive third, there's errors there. Jesus is great, but sometimes we need a striker to put the ball in the back of the net. Purple patch players, Eddie Nketiah, Fabio Vieira, and many others. Trossard isn't quite that, but Trossard's found a good run of form. Are they able to maintain it? With the exception of Trossard, are the others that I've named able to maintain this level of consistency and make the difference? There's a lot of volatility in people like Martinelli, who hasn't really been bagging this season. Goals win games, and we need to kind of do that, really. God forbid, but you take Saliba out that side, Gabriel out that side, a couple of others, we don't look the same team. Now, injuries happen. We have to get on with it, if I'm completely honest with you. As I said, and as well, I think, can Mikel Arteta evolve this side? Can we have different ways of playing, which we play slightly different from last season? But in terms of goal scoring, I like the patience. I like that we're patient. If we can't go down the right, we'll go down the left. But I do think we need that healthy element of ruthlessness and being a bit more direct, really. And we have shown we could do that on occasion. We was direct at Brentford, where Havertz scored. We did that against Sevilla. We did that against City indirectly. We did that against Chelsea. So that I guess that's something in that regards, people, to kind of be positive about. I don't think Xhaka's been replaced enough. I think there's a big hole in the midfield. You keep seeing I revert back to midfield. I think we've got a lot of good players, but a majority of them are purple patch players. Like, there's only a couple in this squad that I think will maintain their form for about 28 of the 38 Premier League games, win, lose or draw, if I'm completely honest. As I said, I think there's a lot of drama to our games, even the ones we win. But then again, reasons to be optimistic. As I said, we've got a long way to improve defensively, but I think we're improving a lot defensively. If we can marry that with getting a couple of midfield options and being more ruthless in front of goal, looking like a team that can really go up the gears in an offensive sense, then I think to a degree we could potentially be unstoppable, or really give this, this Manchester City team, which, it's unfair that they're in this league because no one can beat them, but give them a decent fight towards winning the Premier League, or run it to the last game of the season, really and truly. That's it for me, really, if I'm completely honest. I do think there's a lot of experience. Zinchenko and Jesus have won titles. Jorginho and Havertz have won trophies. Odegaard in this young squad, there's a lot of transferable experience that a lot of these players can give. And obviously the last 2 seasons have been filled with a lot of positivity, but it's also ended quote unquote negatively for what we've aspired to. So I do think that the players that were here, the best feeling you can learn from is regret, because you can't do anything about it. So when we've sat there in the dressing rooms and not had the seasons that we've wanted, or not been able to take advantage of what's been thrown our way, that can be used as a fuel. And I do believe in the manager Mikel Arteta. I don't back a man blindlessly and things like that. And if I praise you, I will ask questions. But I do think there's reasons to be optimistic. Just for me, I just feel there's more reason as to why we won't win the league. Do not get it twisted, though. Man need to be fighting for that Premier League regardless, people. And that's what makes me more frustrating, because we all know City will go up their levels as the season goes on. But imagine where we would look, if we got something out of the Newcastle game, a draw or 3 points. If we didn't shoot ourselves in the foot against Spurs, Chelsea and Fulham, where we should have won all 3 of those games and taken 9 points, where would we be? Now, again, not everyone's going to be perfect over 38 games. I don't think there's a manager in the Premier League that will say, even if they won 38 games, that they've been perfect. But, these are the elements. So I think we're developing something well, but I still think we're a bit short ultimately. Of course, I hope to be wrong. And as I said, we need to be going all the way. Let me know your thoughts, people. Comment, like, subscribe. Do you think Arsenal will or can win the league? Do you think we're short? Where do you think we're short? Let me know your thoughts, people. It'd be a boring world if we all thought the same. So I welcome all differences of opinions. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, turn on your notification bell. Stay safe, stay blessed. One love.
There's always just that active and defending. I think it's like